Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Collegian Football Podcast. It's Justin Morganstein alongside Alexis Yoder again. And first of all, happy Father's Day to everyone across our fan base. Obviously, hope you spend the day with your dads and have a great day. But of course, also some interesting news in the world of Penn State football this week. So, Alexis, I think we'll just get right into it. So first of all, the Buffalo Bills had a interesting development come out about them this week. They have a lease agreement on their normal stadium in Buffalo that is coming to a close in a couple of years, 2023, I believe. And they are going to potentially be, in the market for a temporary stadium while, they get things worked out in Buffalo with potentially building a new facility. And of course, in that article, it comes out that the two spots that could be the new temporary homes of the Buffalo Bills are Toronto and State College, Pennsylvania, in Beaver Stadium. And obviously, that's something we've seen before with Minnesota, the Vikings playing in TCF Bank Stadium, for a few years ago. But at the same time, obviously, that is something that would be incredibly unique and obviously hasn't happened in Beaver Stadium before. So, Alexis, what do you think? What do you think about this whole development? And is it something that is, realistic or something that's, maybe a bit far-fetched?
I first want to say, no, it is not realistic. While it would be nice, but it is just not realistic for a multitude of reasons. But if we were living in a perfect world and this would somehow make the Buffalo Bills come to Beaver Stadium for their temporary home while their stadium is being built, it would be great for the city of State College. It's a small city that has lost so much over the last year and a half due to the coronavirus pandemic, with students not being around to be in those businesses and the restaurants and the stores, and the lost money that could have been made from the sports seasons. Downtown State College is usually bustling on weekends, even during the week, with the various sports that are being played. But it was just like a ghost town over the summer and over the last year. And the Buffalo Bills making Beaver Stadium their home would really bring a lot of this business back to State College, not just on Saturdays, but on Sundays. So it would bring a new fan base to State College, which would be nice. But once again, Justin, I really just don't think this is realistic.
Yeah. I mean, you covered a lot of the points, but, when I saw this first come out, there were just so many, potential factors about this not working that just came to my head. I mean, I just think, first of all, what would be cool about it is between Penn State and Bills Mafia tailgates, I think State College could potentially become the tailgating capital of the world. I mean, you get two of the best tailgating fan bases there. That'd be pretty cool. But anyway, why it wouldn't work, I think, is just, you have so many logistical issues. I think you would never realistically be able to have, a Bills game and a Penn State game in the same weekend. Just the fact that, all those hotels are filled up and you get such an influx of people that travel into State College, and, to get all that moved and operated within 2 days or even just a day seems very unrealistic. And, also just the fact that, of course, it's 4 hours away from the city of Buffalo at least. And, no NFL team has played that far away from their home stadium for in recent memory, as far as I'm aware of. And, I brought up earlier that Minnesota, was able to play at TCF Bank Stadium when the Vikings were able to play in Minnesota's TCF Bank Stadium. That's in Minneapolis. Like, that is at least in the city. Like Pennsylvania, in central Pennsylvania, I don't know how many Bills fans there are, and it's a 107,000 seat stadium. Like, how much of that is getting filled realistically? I know Bills fans, like, they're very passionate. Like we said, that would be some cool tailgates, honestly, to be able to see in person. But and they have a good team, but realistically, people aren't traveling from Buffalo to State College. And at the end of the day, that's going to look like an empty stadium. It's not going to work. And I don't believe Penn State has really ever done any, sporting events outside of Penn State football games at Beaver Stadium. I know the grass is very important to the agricultural school. So that would certainly be a factor. And just also, when's the last time Beaver Stadium has served any alcohol? I know it's a Big Ten rule. And that would be a whole nother element, just getting that staff there and making all that work. And it's for all those reasons.
Love their booze, so you can't take that away from them once they get inside the stadium.
I mean, I might have to just go and watch people jump on tables just for fun. Like that is, does that not look like the most fun thing ever? Like, have you ever jumped on a table?
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of want to participate. I think that looks so fun, but I mean, it would be so cool to think about, like an NFL team being a state college, just a weird concept, but it's just such a flawed plan. And, eventually the Bills are going to stay in Buffalo. I mean, they just have too big of a following, and they're most likely doing this for leverage. No way they're moving to Canada either. So I think that is something that, maybe seemed interesting at first, but it is just not realistic. And I think the only reason it kind of is realistic is because, their owner, of course, Mr. Pagula, who built the hockey arena at State College as well. He's the owner of Buffalo Bills, of course, and he has a State College connection. So, I'm sure that's where it derived from, but at the same time, it's just unrealistic and something that it's just not going to work, I feel. And so, also something that was interesting within the Penn State football world of news this week was I wrote a column about it. Antonio Shelton, or my apologies, not Antonio Shelton, the former Nittany Lion, Drew Shelton, the current commit to the Nittany Lions, had a recruiting visit to Florida this week, even though he's committed to Penn State, of course. And it was something that struck me just because he had been someone who, said he was locked in, months ago, way before, open recruiting started back up, which it recently did. And, he took a visit to Florida this week. And for me, that was something that was definitely a concern, even though he tweeted the other day that he's 100%, as they like to say, 107% locked in to, being a Nittany Lion. But it's something that struck me is, can this be a problem for Penn State going forward? Or is this something that is actually going to benefit them? Because, they, of course, can have their official visits too, which he took and he committed to right after. So I'm interested to, kind of get your take on that and what you think that, open recruiting and visits, even for commits, will mean for Penn State.
First of all, I think that players going through the recruiting period over the last year have had it so tough without having any visits anywhere. You almost have to just, take your Zoom calls, your phone calls, or virtual tours or whatever they were doing and just almost hope for the best. I mean, in general, we know what programs these days have to offer because it's so publicized, but at the same time, they did lose so much. I mean, when recruits go to visit Penn State, they want to be in Beaver Stadium for that 107K strong. They really need to get that Penn State experience being in Beaver Stadium with a full crowd, student section, everything to really be drawn into going to Penn State. So in that respect, I think Penn State could benefit from this, but also Penn State has lost a couple big recruits in the past that originally committed and then changed their minds with other schools that they've been in contact with, whether it was they officially decommitted or kept contact going. They've lost a couple of big recruits in that regard. So I think it's almost a double-edged sword. Like, it could benefit them tremendously in one way because they could host recruits this upcoming season that maybe they are committed to another school. Maybe they are in the market to decommit. So that could almost be the factor that makes them realize that Happy Valley is their true home for their collegiate career. But also, once again, they've had a reputation for getting 4 or 5-star recruits to decommit. So it could go either way, but it should definitely be a concern for Franklin and his staff moving forward.
Yeah, I'll tell you that when I saw that Shelton was taking that visit to Florida, I mean, I think I was very concerned. And, that is just something that the program's in a very, state of not limbo, but they're in a sensitive state right now where they came off their worst season of the James Franklin era. And again, these recruits didn't get to see a whiteout. They didn't get to, experience the things that normal recruits do, going to see Happy Valley. And, it's a lot better to go see Penn State than, talk about it. Not that Central Pennsylvania, isn't glorious, but, all they have to do is talk about, the palm trees and the 80-degree weather in Florida. And, that's a selling point. State College is a unique place. And in order to get these recruits, you got to get them to see the campus. And now that that's a thing, I think that there's room for optimism, just considering that they're going to get to see that whiteout this year. And, a guy leaving like Drew Shelton would have just set the wrong tone going into the year, because he's a guy that, him and Tangwell are going to be cornerstones of their offensive line. And just being able to, see them, and that the fact that they didn't even get to, experience some of the things the other recruits were able to do, and they still committed, is something as a recruit to me would, speak volumes. And now that he's back locked in, it should be a big relief for the program. And I think now Franklin has got to be, as aggressive as ever in just getting these kids to visit, getting these kids the experience of being at Penn State. Because like we talked about with Tom Bahali on the pod last week, once you see it, once you see that stadium, once you see, the football town that it becomes every Saturday, it's something as a recruit that has to make you salivate. And the fact that they're able to do that now is really, really important. And I think this year, the fact that they also have a great recruiting class, coming in for 2022, that allows you to build on that. And is something that it's really going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Just, with the open recruiting just opening back up, and, all these recruits just now playing as Penn State football players. So, I think it's going to benefit Penn State overall right now, just because now they're going to be able to show them the campus. But, you keep in mind that a lot of these guys haven't seen all these campuses. And once they go to a Florida, once they go to a nice weather school, like even out west, like a USC or a UCLA, like you're going to have to compete with that. And just having that football town draw is really what allows you to compete with that. So I think they'll be fine. And it was just a scare, but I mean, it's definitely something to, keep an eye on as we move forward. 100%. And now we are going to get a little bit into our first positional preview of the offseason. We're going to talk about quarterback, of course. And, so of course, starting with Sean Clifford, back again as a starter this year. It's pretty much a lock that he will be the week 1 starter. What are your expectations for Sean this year, Alexis? And, what are you kind of looking for from the jump under, a new offensive coordinator?
First things first, he is coming off I feel his worst season as a Nittany Lion. I mean, his first year as the starter after Trace McSorley left was pretty respectable for his first start. And I think expectations were high last season for him coming in to improve. And from my point of view, I think that he regressed. There were countless times where he overthrew, underthrew, or just was not on target at all. And while it was, yes, a new offensive coordinator, there's really no excuse for those kind of things, especially when you're in your second year as a starter with some pretty good receivers around you. I mean, he had, you have Dots and you have a couple other receivers that are pretty respectable in the Big Ten, and you just can't set them up as well as you need to for the duration of a game. And you can't really expect to win a lot of games like that. And, this year he has so much room to improve. Like, he has a lot of tools around him. He has a good run game, strong receiving core. There's really no excuse at this point for Sean Clifford. He needs to have the best season. And I think that he's going to. I think this is going to be a very improved season for him.
Mm-hmm. I will piggyback on the fact that you said there's no reason for him not to succeed this year. Like, he is now an experienced college football quarterback, as experienced as they come. I understand, it is obviously his fourth offensive coordinator at this point, with it being Joe Moorhead earlier, Ricky Ronnie, Shiraka, and now Mike Yurcich. But he has all, like you said, all the tools to be able to, take the next step, and you don't need to be a Joe Burrow and, take that giant leap like he did with LSU in 2019. But you just have to allow your team to put your team in a position to win ball games. And at the beginning of the season last year, he didn't do that. Turn the ball over. Like you said, he missed throws and just was rattled. And once the Will Levis, dynamic sort of was created, you could sense that he lost confidence. And when your starter loses that confidence, it's ripple effects through the whole team. But, in the second half of the year, I did see why James Franklin, what he likes in him. He was able to, manage the football way better. He cut back on his turnovers. And, I think that they put him in a position to succeed way more by giving him, easier routes to throw to. And obviously the improvement of Jahan Dotson and Parker Washington as the season kind of went on helped as well. And he also got used to, of course, not having Pratt Freiermuth. And he only played 4 games and was honestly able to really get that connection with, Theo Johnson and Brenton Strange going as the season was over. But if he is able to just put them in a position where he can allow them, to succeed on their own, the running backs and the receivers, he's going to be good. And he has 2 returning tackles as well in an offensive line that is pretty experienced and has a guy in Rasheed Walker who's going to be a high round draft pick covering his blind side. And with all those pieces put in place, it's on him now. It's time for Sean Clifford to take the next step, not the huge leap, because I don't think you can expect that necessarily, but just the next step. If he can take that little step and just be a productive enough quarterback, they're going to be in a position to win ball games. Because there are other teams in the Big Ten that are exactly like Penn State. You take like a Wisconsin, who they're playing week 1, where they have a lot of their, starting spots set, and their quarterback play has been a little shaky. And that is just the way it's been with Penn State. And if they could just get that figured out, then, a lot of things are going to come together. But of course, I also wanted to talk about the backup quarterbacks, which are Taquan Robertson and Christian Veilleux. And they are 2 guys who, are going to compete with Sean Clifford. And if they were in a position, to take over at the starting spot right now, they would. But I think it also shows something that they are not in that position, it appears right now, or at least James Franklin makes it seem to be, that Sean Clifford's his guy. And not to, knock on Taquan at all, but he was a guy who I kind of expected to, maybe compete with him a little more and to, threaten for that starting spot. But I think, we saw in the spring game that Taquan was, a bit shaky at times. He threw that opening pick 6 to start the blue-white game, which was a little shaky. But, if he can just get his mechanics down and become, the passer that everyone, wants him to be, then obviously he can do it with his athleticism. But if he can, get those down and work with both Clifford and Christian Veilleux, who are both, have some good mechanics as part of their game. If he can keep working with them, then, he's someone who I would still look, maybe next year to take a step himself and, become, the next quarterback of this team.
Yeah, for sure. I think that an important detail that Taquan and Christian have that Sean Clifford didn't have is they have a new offensive coordinator that in Yurcich that seems to be shaping up to take a residency in State College for a pretty long time. I mean, just from what James Franklin and Sean Clifford have said about him so far. I mean, this guy is working for them so far. They have a high-paced offense. Sean Clifford seems very comfortable in this style of offense, and I don't think there's any reason why Taekwon and Christian wouldn't be comfortable in this. So I think having that level of consistency when you're starting off in your collegiate career is something that is important. It sets the foundation that you can build upon with not only the coaching staff, but also the recruits that are coming in, the players that are already there that are learning under the same coach as you. I think that is setting a good pace to start off. I think that they're gonna learn a lot from, Sean Clifford's experience, and maybe Taekwon will get in for a snap or two if they get out to a big lead or something in the fourth quarter, just for like some garbage time or whatever. But, getting that experience in, I mean, there's nothing really like playing in a college game. The difference from high school to college is obviously insane. So I think that getting game time in for either of them, whether it's if Sean Clifford has another meltdown or it's in garbage time, then whatever it may be. But also I think that Franklin has said good things about both of them. He said they're not where they need to be their starter. I mean, you said that before. He's made it pretty clear that Sean Clifford's going to be the week 1 starter. But, some promising backups. And I think that's, as we saw last season, that is something that is very important for this team.
Yeah, I liked a couple of things you brought up. I also thought last year, I forgot to mention this, I was, a little disappointed that they didn't give Taekwon, some more snaps. They were 0-4 at one point. And I understand that, they might not have known that Will Levis was going to, enter the transfer portal after the season. And that, Sean, he obviously bounced back a little, but, didn't have the bounce back right away. He would have really benefited from that experience, like you said. And there's nothing like game time. You can take as many reps in practice. You can, do as much work on the side as you can. But, that experience playing in the Big Ten, there's nothing like it. And I also wanted to mention that I really think that Clifford's next step is going to be critical, just being with Yurcich. And I think that what Yurcich brings is that he has worked with, so many different types of quarterbacks. You look at, he could fill the role of a Mason Rudolph, who's a guy who, could stand in the pocket and, deliver, short balls on slants, but also, work with down the field a little bit as well. But he also has worked with guys like Sam Ehlinger and, even Justin Fields, who can scramble outside the pocket. And we've seen Sean Clifford do that before. Last year, he was almost used as the running back at times, like Will Levis. And just bringing all of those elements together, I think will only benefit Sean Clifford and, Taekwon and Christian as well, considering, they're still, developing and becoming the quarterback that they hope to be as well. So, yeah.
Right. Awesome. So I guess predictions from us: Sean Clifford, week 1 starter, but 2 quality backups behind him. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Collegian Football Podcast. I'm Alexis Yoder. Alongside me is Justin Morganstein. And yeah, that's it.